Let's now start with the color adjustment options. So to start with, we go to the menu bar, and in the menu bar we click on the image, and then we go to adjustment, and these are all your color adjustment options. So you can observe one simple thing, that all the options are separated with a horizontal line. So that simply describes that these all have a different set of functions, and it works as per the different values. So that's how we would be understanding soon in this particular section. So let's start with the brightness and contrast. So if I click over here, you can see this is brightness and contrast. To understand how a brightness and contrast works, you just need to understand its literal meaning and your job is done. And to start with the brightness and contrast, I would like to have a gradient, and that too a black to white gradient on the canvas, so that it gives us a proper information or proper detail about how a brightness contrast works. To be on a very easier and simpler side, we would enable the histogram as well, so that we can see how things are changing when we go for brightness and contrast. So this is your histogram, which you can see over here. And let's now start with the first option, which is brightness and contrast. Now when we talk about the word brightness simply means increasing or having more and more whiteness, or you can say the more and more light is present over there. That is basically known as more and more brightness. So if we click and drag, and you can see what we are actually doing is we are increasing more and more white in this entire image. You need to observe one thing when you are going for brightness and contrast, that whenever we are increasing brightness, it increases brightness more on the whiter side and lesser on the darker side. Similarly, if we decrease it, you can see that the black has been made more darker this side. If you observe the pixels on the edge, you can see these are still on the brighter side. So you can also observe it in the histogram, that how it's actually changing. Most of the pixels have shifted towards the darker side, and very few pixels are left in the brighter side. Similarly, it goes in the opposite direction in the similar way. You also have one option called as use legacy. So if we enable use legacy, and then if we click and drag, you can see that the white is increasing on each and every pixel, be it a darker one, be it a lighter one, be it a middle value, whatsoever it is. It's not restricting itself as per the brighter or darker value. So wherever the values are brighter or wherever the values are darker, it is increasing in a constant way for each and every pixel. Similarly, you can reduce it. So when we reduce it, you can see the reduction of white pixels also happens because the brightness is reduced, and you can check this in the histogram. Apart from that, this legacy option is on, so that's why it's happening in this particular way. The next option is contrast along with the brightness. So when we talk about the literal meaning of the word contrast is basically the opposite to each other. So as of now, you can see this is black, this is white, and there is a smooth transition in between the black and white values. So when we increase the contrast, you can see as of now the legacy option is on, so that's why the output is exactly so crisp. So you can see when we are increasing the contrast, you can see the difference in a better and the prominent way. If you reduce the contrast, you cannot even find the difference between the darker and the brighter pixel, because as of now all the pixels are actually going on the nearby value. So that's how you can say, if we reduce the contrast to, let's say, the minimum value, you can see there's just one line available, because each and every pixel has become just one single color. And if you click and drag, if you increase it, you can see this is how the histogram is separating itself. So all the pixels are either on the black side or either on the whiter side. So this is how we have created the contrast effect. Now if we disable the legacy option and then we click and drag, you can see the effect is not in that prominent way how it was seen in the earlier section. So it's your choice whether you want to use legacy or not. Now after understanding brightness and contrast on black to white gradient, let's see how brightness and contrast works on a colorful image. So this is the picture where we would try the brightness and contrast on this picture, and then we'll see how it works with this. So the moment we imported this picture, for the first thing we would like to observe the histogram. In the histogram you can see that the colors are properly distributed from like 0 to 255 range. So that is overall a perfect image. Now let's go to, let's say, the brightness and contrast option, and then if we are increasing this slider, that is the brightness slider, you can see how the histogram is changing. So that means like most of the pixels are actually getting richer in terms of white, but the pixels which were already on the darker side, these are least affected, and the more affected pixels are which are already on the whiter side. Similarly, if you decrease it, you get a different picture, like most of the pixels are becoming darker, and like the pixels which are already on the highlighted side, they are least affected. If we go for the contrast value, you can see that now the values, or you can see the separation between the color values will be more prominent. Now previously when we look at the sea, you can see the foam and the water, they are not separated properly, but if you go for an increase in contrast, you can see these are separated because there's a contrast effect in between these two. If you go for the legacy value and then if you go for contrast, you can even go in a different look for this image. You can reduce it, but only if the reduction helps you, or you can increase the brightness so that the white will be increased in an overall image, or you can decrease the brightness value. So it's not like that the brightness and contrast value is directly applied on an image. It will be applied along with the other color adjustments as well. So as of now, this was just the basic explanation of how brightness and contrast works. You can combine this effect along with the other effects to achieve your result.